Welcome to the Mixed Race Belonging podcast, where we explore the intersection of mixed identity and belonging through the lens of somatics and personal and collective liberation to help you heal your belonging wounds and reconnect with your innate wholeness through relationships, new experiences, and activism. I'm your host, Raina LaGrand, an embodiment coach for mixed race people with a background as a trauma therapist, yoga teacher, and health educator. The tools and insights I share with you here are the approach that has not only helped me heal my belonging wound, but also helped me help my mixed race clients do the same. We all need something good to belong to right now. Relationships and spaces where we feel safe, held, seen, heard, and dignified. Thanks for being here, and let's get started with today's show. Welcome back to the Mixed Race Belonging podcast. I'm so excited today to have a special guest with me, Dr. Hayley Haywood, who is a new friend and colleague and is going to talk to us about an exciting community offering that she's created. And then we'll tell you how you can participate. So welcome, Dr. Hayley.
Thank you so much. I'm so appreciative of you, Raina, for sharing this space with me and for all you've done to, amplify this exciting work that we'll talk a little bit more about today.
Yeah, absolutely. So Hayley is well, actually, I'll have you introduce yourself, Hayley. Can you tell us just a little bit about who you are broadly and like your work, your business?
Yeah, sure. So thank you for everybody who's tuning in to listen to us today. My name's Dr. Hayley Haywood. I identify as a Black biracial woman raised in an interfaith family in New York, by two artists who taught me to create the world that I believe in. And I think being raised by artists definitely has been a huge shape of the lens that I bring and my ability to kind of dream beyond what's presented to me, but see what could be. And that's really been the core of my work, from the access and equity space. So I spent about 15 years on college campuses doing this work, advocating for students of color, first gen students, queer students, trying to create more access, but also student support, right? Making sure that students have resources that are identity conscious, that take their lived experience into account. So doing leadership development with faculty and staff and working to support students directly. Um, and I really saw firsthand how there's so much emphasis getting students to and through college, but the energy is really not matched when we think about the transition after college, right? And that college to career shift that folks are making. And there's just a lot
Totally.
of privilege and assumptions there. And so that really led me to want to look at these systems to figure out how we can have more career equity for folks, whether they go to college or not. So I got my doctorate in organizational change and leadership from the University of Southern California. And through that process, I studied, it was a critical narrative study on the college to career professional development journeys of first generation professionals of color. And really, it was this idea of helping identify what are the barriers, but also how are folks channeling agency and their own empowerment and the capitals that they do bring, called community cultural wealth, to turn barriers into pathways in their journey to soul-filling work. So that's really the core of the work that I do now with Elevating Access is helping to expand pathways to soul-filling work for change makers. So I do that mostly
Mhm.
through coaching, consulting, and community-centered events like the summit.
I love that so much. I think that is so spot on. I've never thought about that, but I have experienced that of all the support throughout college and even graduate school, and then being, an early career professional and feeling like I'm just out here. I was just out there trying to figure it out. And so I love that you are someone who noticed that and has been able to like create something specifically for folks who are entering the workforce.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is this is such a common experience. And it's like on the university side, folks are like, well, that's employers' responsibility. And the employers are like, well, that's the college's responsibility. And so who is pouring into, diverse change makers who want to make a difference without sacrificing the fulfillment that they deserve when they're trying to do impact work?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, you've been running Elevating Access for some time, and now you are launching this exciting summit. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the summit is next month. We kick off on May 7th, and it is really designed for ease because I know a lot of times, when conferences exist, they're kind of designed as this really intense, urgent experience where you're supposed to go to
Hmm.
sessions like all day long, and there's not really space for processing. And for introverts like me, it can also be just so draining and exhausting. And so it can be hard to really maximize the experience. So the summit is kind of designed as an unconference. Um, so throughout 4 weeks, there's about 1 to 2 sessions each week, and it's really meant to provide a holistic, nourishing toolkit for mixed race, multiracial folks doing impact work. So bringing together healers and community organizers and educators and creatives to this one space to have a conversation about multiraciality through the lens of what does it look like for us to do equity work and support and hold space for our communities while also allowing space for ourselves.
I love that word, unconference. Makes me think of like a deconstructed cheesecake at a restaurant. But also, I feel like in this time that we are in of multiple crises in the world,
Yeah.
resources, are scarce as far as like finances to travel or, to take the time away from whatever our responsibilities are. I think that this is a really great accessible way for people to get to engage in this like leadership development work. I also think just the length, the duration of it, it allows actually for a deepening that sometimes a weekend conference doesn't allow. Like you're there and it's this time capsule and then you're out of it. Whereas I
Right.
think the Elevate Your Impact Summit, like I can imagine that there's going to be connections that are really made and like nurtured throughout this summit.
Absolutely. And that's part of the design, right? Because as you know, with the therapy work that you've done is it's really easy to get cognitive overload when you have all this
Hmm.
information coming at you. And, when you're just in like a transactional kind of space, it can be really hard to let your guard down, especially as someone moving through the world as a multiracial person, right? Like there's a lot
Hmm.
that sometimes keeps folks from feeling like they can show up as their full selves and a way that feels aligned. And so I'm hoping that through this design and through, as you were saying, the extended time together, and through, creating more access by adding the pay what you can option for folks to join at a price that feels possible for them, and keeping it online, that we can really make this, as you said, a truly accessible experience for those who need it most.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I always, whenever I'm marketing my offerings, I always just like to speak to um, some of the hesitancy or anxiety that comes up for people in signing up
Mhm.
for these things as multiracial, multicultural people. Um, you know, I think a lot of us have learned to question whether we belong in a space, even when it's explicitly created for us.
Yes.
And I was just thinking about, the conversation we had in our DMs about, you had just commented on one of my posts, like, can we be friends? And like, here we are now on our second Zoom call. I'm presenting at your summit next month and all of that. And just, there's just something to, okay, just like deciding to kind of dive in and take the leap. Is that something you see in the professionals that you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you bringing that up too, because I literally, for folks listening, commented on one of Raina's posts and I was like, can we be friends? Exclamation mark, question mark, like for real. And you just responded, yes, exclamation point. And here we are. So
Yeah,
I'm excited. This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. I can already tell. Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, to your point, it was actually a really powerful moment. A couple of the coaching sessions I had last week within 48 hours. And these are two different women in different states, in different industries, different ages. And both of them described living as if they are a clenched fist.
Hmm.
And I think part of what you're getting at is the the freedom and the liberation that comes when we allow ourselves to unclench and to
Hmm.
expand into all the things that we say we crave, right? Because there's always something, and these are very valid reasons, right? Barriers that really do hold us back and keep us clenched, right? A lot of it is around
Yeah.
protection and trying to mitigate ourselves from disappointment or fear or harm or failure, right? Um, and there's just so much power, even if we just allow ourselves to unclench one finger, right, at a time.
Hmm.
And I think
Oh,
that's is like this summit can be a really powerful part of that journey.
I mean, I feel that as you say that, like that clench in like my heart and just kind of this contraction, this pulling in, which I mean, shameless plug for my session where we're going to be
Yeah.
talking about belonging in our bodies and restoring our blueprint for belonging in the world. Like that is actually such a common somatic experience when you are marginalized and othered, and something that my session is going to help with directly. Can you tell us about some of the other sessions?
Yeah, and just I also want to plug your session because I'm super excited for it. And it's really interesting that you and I came into contact because one of the things I've been talking about with folks lately is it's hard to feel like you can belong anywhere if you don't belong
Hmm.
within yourself.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so the work that you're doing to help people find that grounding of, I belong in this body, I can cherish and care for this body. It's not a liability or an obligation,
Hmm.
right? It's this sacred practice that I can really pour
Hmm.
into. I think what you're doing is just such a key part of building that liberatory toolkit. So thank you again for being part of it.
Totally. And I'll just like add on to that, for a lot of multiracial people, our phenotype can be a source of distress, confusion,
Yeah.
pain, and I think I mean, I do this work because I have learned through my own experience with aspects of my phenotype and like living in a pain that has chronic, or excuse me, living in a body that has chronic pain, like that so much of the world, so many people in the world other us and criticize us, and like we can't do that to ourselves, right? We get to be stewards of our body, care, nurturers, tenders for our body. And so I'm excited to share that with folks. But yeah,
Yeah.
tell me about the other sessions.
So one of the sessions that I'm most excited to facilitate is called Where I'm Really From, Rewriting
Mm.
our narratives on our terms. And
Hmm.
this is a session that all of the most powerful communities that I've cultivated when I used to run programs for incoming students of color and first gen students. I ran like a bridge program, and every year I would start with an activity that's very similar to this. And it was like magic, just seeing people come out of their shell and start building a community from a place of power and
Hmm.
vulnerability and the ability, especially I think this is so key for mixed folks, right, to define ourselves on our terms when we're meeting someone.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
just so powerful, and to be able to
Mm,
hear folks share a little bit about their stories. And like, this is not one of those like you have to come with something written. You don't have to have any writing experience. And sometimes the people who are like, I've never really written creatively have like the most transformative pieces that they share that folks
mm,
resonate with. So I always
mhm.
love that session, and I put that at the beginning as part of the summit kickoff for that reason, to hopefully allow us to really set the tone for the rest of the experience together.
I'm so glad we're going to get to learn from you, in addition to some of the other amazing speakers you're going to tell us about in a moment. But I'm excited that you're facilitating some stuff.
Thank you. I am too. I actually had first came with the idea of the summit after leading a all day pre-conference session for the conference,
Mhm.
the National Conference on Race and Ethnicity and Core, which is currently, given the racial climate in the U.S., indefinitely paused.
Mm,
But I had the chance to lead this all-day experience with about 12 multiracial leaders in higher ed and in the nonprofit space. And for me, I was like, this is the most aligned I've ever felt. This is the least second guessing and internal like dialogue that I've had in a space. I just felt so centered and clear. And I think the experience was a lot more magical because of that. So
mhm.
I'm just really excited that I have an opportunity to do more of this work. I mean, after that moment, I was like, how can I create more spaces like this? This is how I want to.
Mhm.
So it's really a beautiful culmination of the chance to continue to do this work that feels so aligned with me, both professionally and personally.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm so glad that, the summit is offering some continuity from that gap right now. It's so upsetting that that conference is indefinitely paused.
It is. And I'm also
Yeah.
looking at it as an opportunity too, because as what you were saying before around accessibility, the conference, I think the base price was like $600. And, oftentimes you have to fly to be able to attend,
Hmm.
right? So for a lot of folks, especially people who do equity and identity work, we don't always have professional development funding available. And
Hmm.
often the work is also under compensated. And so I'm just really excited that we can continue the spirit of this work, but also in a way that could potentially open even more doors and possibilities for folks to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So who else can people expect to hear and learn from at the conference? What kind of speakers besides us and our amazingness?
Yes, as if it wasn't enough, right?
Yeah. That's not it.
But wait, there's more. So we actually have a couple of scholars who've dedicated their careers to studying multiraciality. So one is Dr. Nicholas Lamar Wright, who coined the term chronic code switching in talking about the
Mm,
experiences that Black and white biracial folks have in school and workplaces. And there is Dr. Yvonne Guest, who is a therapist from the UK, who's joining us for a roundtable discussion around sustainable, like activism is kind of what she brings to the table, but the
mhm,
roundtable is about how we do this work centering fulfillment, not self-sacrifice. Because
mm,
as I'm sure you know, so many folks who hold space for others tend to abandon ourselves in the process, or at least like
mhm.
deprioritize our own needs. So this is really about presenting some possibility models for what a different approach might look like for folks to consider in doing this equity and this critical liberation work. And then some of the folks, just given the climate, I can't necessarily share their information publicly, but there's
Mhm,
one of the original scholars on monoracism is also doing a
mhm.
session that's going to be like an intro to understanding monoracism and how it shows up in our lives and in ourselves and what it looks like to kind of unpack that, which I think is so
Great.
critical. Because
Yeah.
when I first got into this work, like identity related work, monoracism as a term hadn't even been coined yet.
Yeah.
Um, and so I know how, for me, that so much of my journey, I didn't even have the language to describe
Totally.
navigating, right? So I think like these sessions, bringing in some of the academic theoretical framework pieces can also be really helpful to equip folks with language to describe things they've always felt, but never necessarily
Mm-hmm.
without a name.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know that concept of mono-racism is so validating and makes so much sense. I can't believe that we've lived most of our lives without it.
Yes. Oh my goodness, for sure.
What else do you want people to know about the summit? Anything else you want to plug or let them know that they can kind of ex take away from the summit?
Yeah, I think for me, the community building is what I'm most excited to see happen, and allowing people to really make intentional connections. I think, especially in this climate we're navigating, solidarity is so critical.
Mhm.
And it's being able to connect with folks who likely show up in the world very differently. I think that's one of the beautiful things about creating a space that centers multiraciality is there's so much diversity and richness in the room and intersectionality. And so being able to really practice what it means to be in solidarity with folks who show up
Mhm.
in the world differently than we do and
Mhm.
to navigate what it looks like to be mixed race, but also like what privileges come with that. What points of power can we lean into to elevate the impact that we have? And what are also, I think, most importantly, the strengths that often get dismissed or erased when thinking about multiraciality? So one of the conversations we're going to have, which is like a community conversation, so more of a facilitated dialogue, is around community cultural wealth and this idea of navigating power, privilege, and positionality as mixed race change makers. And so I'm excited to see just
Mm.
what organically comes up in that conversation and in that space.
That sounds so great. I cannot wait for the summit to start and it's not too far away.
It is around the corner.
Yeah. So where can people sign up? I know that, this podcast will publish tomorrow, April 28th, and registration closes on the 30th. So there's a tight turnaround for folks who are going to be listening to this episode. So where can they sign up? I'll also put it in the show notes, but just in case people it's nice for folks to hear too.
For sure. Yeah, thank you for that. So the website where you can learn about the summit, it has the details of the schedule and session descriptions, and you can check out the presenter bios, as well as actually claim your ticket, is
Mhm.
www.elevatingaccess.com/community.
Great. Great. And where can people just find you in general? So there's the Elevating Access website, and on socials, you are.
Yes, I am also at Elevating Access. So both on
Okay, great.
Instagram and TikTok, and then I'm most active actually on LinkedIn. So you can
Hmm.
find me there at Dr. Hayley Haywood.
Great. Lovely. Thanks so much for your time, Haley, and looking forward to being in touch with you throughout the whole month of May. Hoping to see some of you listening at the summit. I again will put the direct link in the show notes, and you can reach out to Haley on Instagram if you have any questions, maybe, or just want to let her know that you're excited. Be a little hype person. Yeah.
Yes, I would love to hear from you if any of this resonates. And I just want to underscore, I think we can't overstate enough. Like, this space is for you. If you resonate with
Hmm.
any of what we're talking about, I know there are so many different questions and concerns and hesitations that can come up in spaces like this. And I just ask that you give us a shot. That's one of the nice things also about Pay What You Can is you can kind of
Hmm.
enter at your own risk and give it a little taste and see, just how magical these spaces can be, especially if you've never had access to a space that centers multiraciality before. I can't
Yeah.
express just how powerful these spaces and affirming these
Yeah.
spaces be.
It's so healing. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Haley.
Thank you, Raina. I really appreciate it.